an original MCM production.
And now I'd like to call upon member Linnea Katz-Pettit, Executive Director of Rebuilding Together, Greater Milwaukee, to provide our invocation.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is adapted from a caregiver's prayer and hopefully timely. As I go about the many tasks of daily caregiving, give me energy. As I watch my loved one oh so slowly walk across a room, give me strength. As I answer his or her repeated questions, just one more time, give me patience. As I look for solutions to whatever the most recent concern is, please give me wisdom. As I reminisce about him or her with the good days and the moments of laughter over fond memories, as I get to know my loved one in a new way, seeing her strength and frailties give me joy. Give me joy. As I sit beside my loved one's bed waiting for her medication to take place, give me comfort and peace. Lighten my burden, answer my prayer, and give me the strength of what to do when it often seems so impossible. Give me the quiet place to rest when I need it, and quieting of my anxieties when I feel overwhelmed. Be my strength as I change my attitude from a tired, frustration, and sometimes angry caregiver to a loving and compassionate one I want to be. Remain my constant companion as I face the challenges of caregiving. Today we'll embrace Marty and thank him for sharing his vulnerability and his stories, and I have no doubt we'll have much to learn. Imagine if this was you and this was your stories as we listen. Would you have the patience, the resilience, or the strength? I want to leave you with a couple final thoughts to consider. Living life fully includes caring for yourself and giving care to others. Keeping both in balance will make your journey through life rich and rewarding. Giving care is sacred. Recognizing your actions are prayers in motion. Valuing the gifts of caregiving. And the last, most important too, it's an opportunity to grow in tolerance, patience, compassion, and understanding with the limitless power of love. And there's no perfect way to care. Perfection isn't the goal, it's love.
That was poignant and beautiful, Linnea. Thank you. I welcome James Madlin, Chief Operating Officer of Miller Communications, to introduce our speaker.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm not sure that I can provide an introduction more fitting than Linnea already did, and her reflections this morning, they were very, very apt. But it is my distinct pleasure and honor to formally introduce our today's speaker. He is a noted author and philanthropist, an advocate, an Alzheimer's caregiver, and of course, former governor of the state of Wisconsin. Governor Schreiber, or Marty as he prefers to be called, found a way to take the pain of watching his beloved wife, Elaine, suffer from the challenges of Alzheimer's and turn it into a force for good. As a caregiver, Marty experienced many of his own challenges, not least of which were health challenges. And in response, he partnered with the Alzheimer's Association to launch Operation Stronger Together, a program designed to reach people like him who were struggling to care for family members with Alzheimer's. Make sure that they knew and were connected to the resources that could make a difference in their lives. Marty's involvement also inspired the state of Wisconsin to develop an online toolkit for employers to help them provide services to working caregivers throughout the state of Wisconsin, which was rolled out last year by Marty along with Governor Scott Walker. Marty's also bravely shared his personal story in media outlets across the state as well as in speaking venues, some of which you may have seen. And his whole purpose in sharing his story, as he does today, is to help raise awareness of the challenges that families with family members suffering from Alzheimer's face and the resources that are available to them, and to make sure that they are connected to them. And the great news is, it's working. Caregivers are contacting the Alzheimer's Association at record numbers to be connected with resources. Doctors are referring their patients right away to the resources that will make a difference in their lives and the lives of their families. And families and caregivers are receiving assistance right away at no cost to them to make their lives better. In honor of all that Governor Schreiber has done in this area, the Alzheimer's Association, which I'm proud to serve on the board of, recently named their helpline and care consultation area the Elaine and Friends Caregiver Help Center. Please join me in welcoming to Rotary today the author of My Two Elaines, Governor Schreiber.
What a wonderful introduction that was. I'll tell you, I sure enjoyed it. How can I ever give a speech that's going to measure up to everything that you said? I don't know, but I am going to try. And I want you to know how happy I am to be here. The last time I spoke to Downtown Rotary was almost 30 years ago when I was a candidate for mayor of Milwaukee. Now, there was no one here that was old enough to vote for me at the time. But I'm sure had you known about it, you would have voted. In fact, that probably was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because I really analyzed after that election, you know, that soul searching that you do when you suffer a terrific loss. I finally understood why I wanted to be mayor of Milwaukee. And I concluded that that would be the only way that I could speak annually to Milwaukee Downtown Rotary. And so I've missed you over the last almost 30 years, and am indeed complimented and very privileged to have a chance to be back with you. My first experience with dementia was back in 1978 when I was running for governor of Wisconsin, and I gave a campaign speech in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And after the speech was over, the people were milling around, and this elderly gentleman came up to me, and he said, "Governor," he said, "that was the worst god-awful speech I ever heard in my whole life." Whoa, his wife heard it, and she was very nervous and concerned, so she rushed up to me, and she said, she says, "Governor, please, don't be concerned with what my husband said. He's old, and he's senile, and all he does is simply repeat whatever he hears everybody else say." I want to just take a moment to acknowledge two friends who have been with me and guided me. Sister Edna from St. Anne's, where my wife attended daycare a lot. Sister Edna, for all you do, so thank you very, very much. And then Paula Kiley, who is in charge of the Milwaukee Public Library. What a great job you do. It's just outstanding. One of our best offenses for the preservation of our civilization. And then, of course, Tom Lavacek with the Alzheimer's Association, who has done so much to help make sure that we can get not only the research money, but also to help caregivers do their part. This is a deadly disease, as you know, and it's the 6th largest killer. And of the 10 top largest killer, it is the only one that cannot be prevented, cured, or slowed down. And my wife and I have been living with this disease for approximately 12 years. And during that time, there was anger, anxiety, stress, grieving, depression. I developed significant health problems. I found out that Alzheimer's is not what you call a chicken casserole disease. If you get cancer and you get chemotherapy treatment and you go home, friends will bring over chicken casserole. If you fall and break a hip, people will bring over chicken casserole. With Alzheimer's, people don't know how to handle it. I don't know if you heard about the fact this person is driving down the highway and he comes across a body in the road. And he gets out and he looks at the body. He gets on 911. He says, look, he says to the dispatcher, you've got to send help immediately. This is tragic. This man is really, really hurt. Dispatcher says, well, thank you. He says, we're going to send help. Where are you? He says, well, I'm on Pistachio Street. Dispatcher says, how do you spell pistachio? He says, spell pistachio. He says, this person is really hurt. How do you spell pistachio? The fellow says, never mind. He says, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Well, the dispatcher says, I thought you said that this man was so very seriously hurt. Why call back in 5 minutes? The man said, I'm going to drag the body over to Elm. And I tell you that story because if I, as a caregiver, don't know how to spell pistachio, if the medical profession doesn't know how to spell pistachio, if health insurers don't know how to spell pistachio, or employers, it's a tough enough disease as it is. And what compelled me to write this book was the fact that this disease, which is in essence a death sentence, is something that is tough enough to battle without being unarmed or uninformed. It's tough enough to battle alone and on itself. And because of that, it makes the challenge that much worse if people don't understand. And that's why I felt compelled to write the book, to help people, to help caregivers cope, learn, and survive. And so Alzheimer's takes you where you don't want to go. And I can remember when I was a young state senator going back in the early 60s, I was going to Washington, D.C. And in front of me, this distinguished gentleman is getting on the airplane, and he says to the flight attendant, does this plane stop in Detroit? Yes, says the flight attendant, this plane stops in Detroit, and then it goes on to Washington, D.C. Well, says this distinguished-looking gentleman, would you please make sure you help me get off this plane in Detroit? I'm inclined to fall asleep. If I fall asleep, I'm going to miss my important meeting. I'll end up... And he says, are you sure? And the flight attendant, no worry. And so what happens is we get off the airplane in Washington, D.C., and here is this distinguished-looking gentleman ahead of me. And he walks up. He says to the flight attendants, I am so absolutely angry. Not only that, but he threatened to hit her. And so I walked up to this gentleman. I said, my goodness. I said, that man certainly is angry. And she says, he's angry. You should have seen the fellow I put off in Detroit. But I'm telling you that this disease takes you where you don't want to go. And because of that, it leads to higher healthcare costs. It leads to lost productivity for employers, higher absenteeism, and also people who may even have to give up their job because they need to take the time off from work. To understand this disease, if you can for a moment, just envision a funnel. And to most of us in our life, when we look through this funnel, the narrow part is by our eye and the wider part is up. And so when we look out, we see the blueness of the sky and we see the beauty of the trees, and the world is good. But what happens with Alzheimer's is that the funnel is inverted. And the person with Alzheimer's then is looking with the big part towards their face and only seeing a little part of their world. That's the only world that they know. And if I, as a caregiver, or if we as people don't understand what Alzheimer's is all about, we expect that person to continue to have a normal functioning life where in reality, all that person can see is that immediate world in front of them. Many, many times my wife would frustrate me by asking the same question over and over and over again. And little did I know, the part of this book is how to help caregivers cope, learn, and survive, but part of the book is what I learned too late. And what I learned too late, or what I learned not soon enough, was what this Alzheimer's disease is all about, and that's why this book, I feel, is so important, so people can understand. Friends, neighbors, relatives. But here's what happens also to the caregiver. You morph from being a loving husband or from a loving caregiver, from a loving person to being a caregiver. And the same thing happens to the caregiver. This funnel is now inverted. And all your life is wanting to help and take care of this person who is so close to you, who has been part of your life, part of my life, since I was 14 years of age. And so it's important then, as you understand this, for example, once Elaine asked me how her parents were. I said, well, Elaine, your mom and dad are both dead. And the shock that was on her face as she realized in her world she had not said goodbye to her parents properly, or the look on her face when she realized that she maybe even didn't attend the funeral, is about as cruel of a thing as I think I could ever have committed to someone. And so now she asks me, now that I understand a little bit better, how are my parents? They're fine. They're at church. Oh, she says, I'm so happy. Therapeutic fibbing. Therapeutic fibbing is important to make sure that you help that person adjust to their world. Therapeutic fibbing. If I would have thought about that 56 years ago when I first got married, or when I was running for mayor of Milwaukee. But that therapeutic fibbing is something that becomes so important. But also, for example, we would go out to eat, and Elaine would grab someone else's wine glass. Elaine, that's not your wine glass. Put it down. Again, it's their own world. That's the only world that they know. And so if it doesn't matter, Elaine drinks the wine. If it does matter, Elaine, thank you so much for finding the wine glass. We want to make sure we have time open for questions and answers. I do want to take a moment to tell you that on each of your desks is the 24-hour hotline that is always available for you to call in case you have any kind of special questions. I also want to point out that it was possible for me to have Kathy Breitenbutcher, who is here, the co-author of the book, to offer this book for sale. I never thought I'd end up being a book salesman. The price of the book is $16.95. For Rotary, it's $15, which includes sales tax. But anyway, the book tries to talk about some of the things I talked about with you here today. I told Linnea, I thanked her for the prayer, and I says, if it's a good speech, if it's a good talk, it was your prayer. If it's a crummy talk, you didn't pray hard enough. This has nothing to do with anything, but I got a couple. There's this one favorite when you talk about prayer. Here's what happens. This lady has a parrot, and this parrot says, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party, Polly wants, it's Polly. So now this woman is having important people come over, and she doesn't know what to do because she doesn't want to embarrass. So she thinks of her priest, so she calls her priest, and she goes, Father, what can I... The father says, this is amazing. I have two parrots myself, Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot, and all they do is pray. I've had them for 10 years. They pray from morning to night, every day, Sundays, all they do is pray. If you bring your parrot and put it in with my Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot, what will happen then at that time, your parrot will become positively influenced. And so they agreed on that technique. And so the lady brought her parrot in. They put it into the cage with Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot. And Polly Parrot says, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party. And Peter Parrot looked at Paul Parrot and says, our prayers have finally been answered. I want to close just by telling you one of the most important but most difficult things that there is to being a caregiver that I found. Extremely important, however, and that is in order for me to be a decent caregiver to my wife with Alzheimer's, I had to let go of my first wife. My first wife I met when I was 14 years of age in Latin class. She was the one that put me through every victory. She was the one that made sure I never felt defeated when I had an election loss. 4 children, 13 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. Alzheimer's begins to have an onset. I'm still expecting her to cook the kind of quality meals to help make sure that the finances are going well, to make sure that we are doing justice with the grandkids and so forth. That person is no more. And as long as I would maintain that feeling that she should not change I could not be a decent caregiver because I would always be trying to reach up to that old established conduct. Once I understood full well that this is now my second Elaine, therefore the name of the book, My Two Elaines, that my second Elaine is someone who is so special. She's so wonderful and gracious and always kind. She's still a first lady. She tells me so, well, here, I explained this to Tom Labachek from, Alzheimer's is not reversible. But they think for some moments in time, the doctor thought it was reversible in Elaine's situation because Elaine kept on telling me how handsome and how intelligent I was. And so they knew then that she had to be coming along on the way to recovery. But once I understood how sweet and wonderful this new woman is, and what also dawned on me the other day is in ways that this Alzheimer's is a terrible disease, but I'm given another chance to show the kind of love and affection that was given to me during those times from the age of 14 on. I now have a chance to be a loving caregiver back. Well, sure, she's not going to be the same kind of person to help guide me in raising children and so forth, but she just had, the other day we walked, she has outside of her room a picture of the two of us. I put it there. It's a picture of the two of us. She took a look at that picture the other day. Oh, she says, that's a pretty good picture of me, but looking at the picture of the two of us, she says, that's a good picture of me. But she says, that's me and my dad, and he sure takes a crummy picture. So you look for those moments of joy. You know, you look for those opportunities to just understand and recognize that one of the things you can do when you get this diagnosis, you can bury your head in the sand. You wait for the axe to fall, crawl under the covers, and hide. Or you can say, wait a minute, this is an opportunity to try and do the best I can in extending love, kindness, and understanding. One of the important aspects of this book also, when I had friends and neighbors and relatives read this book, is they told me that we had no idea what you were going through as a caregiver. And so as important as this book is for a caregiver, it's also important for the friends and relatives of families. So I want to thank you. This has been a really wonderful experience for me to be able to come back and visit with you once again. 28 years is an awful long time for you not to have invited me back, and I don't think you should want to do that again. Also, this should not influence the sale of the book, but I am told in one of these books the lottery number is sequestered. I don't know which book it is, but don't give up. That's all I can say. So, all right. So, let's open it up for questions, and we get. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. I did lose that mayor's race, but you stood it, so thank you very, very much. When I was here a little bit earlier to tell me that clock is what sort of guides me and I should be done by 1 o'clock, and then I checked that clock is about 8 minutes fast, and so we do have that a little bit of time to do. And then also I was told that I should repeat the question so you can all hear it. And what I said in return was I certainly will repeat the question, and if it is not a question I can answer, I will rephrase the question. So yes, in the back? Yeah. All right, the question is, how did that early process go on? Well, thanks to St. Anne's for any number of reasons, but Elaine would back out of the car, back the car out of the garage and get a lot of dents in it. No way near that would happen. So she was approximately 65 years of age, but also sometimes she would cook and she would leave out just some major ingredients. And she would go to St. Anne's and go swimming and take care of things, and then she would forget articles of clothing, and so that was the beginning. And then we had a family doctor who made the diagnosis. And Elaine, once understanding her diagnosis, got a hold of every Alzheimer's book that you could read with the hope and probably the intent, silent prayer, that if I read enough of these Alzheimer's books, I'm going to delay it and it won't continue. But it got to the point where we had been traveling to work at the Silver Spring Neighborhood Center for 10 years, and she would go there and she would just simply get lost and so on. But anything further? Yes. How did I keep my health during this whole thing? I didn't. And that's why I feel it's so important for caregivers to understand this number. They spent over $300,000 on me trying to figure out why I was hard of breathing. Was it sleep apnea? Was it a lung problem? Was it COPD? Legs? Heart trouble? My mentor at the Alzheimer's Association, his wife had Alzheimer's, and he got a heart attack right in the middle of it all. And no heart disease issues before. I was a pretty healthy guy up until that point. Now, I am recovering a bit, but it saps your strength. You go through that grieving and you go through that depression. As I said, you morph into a caregiver where you really don't understand all the negative things that are happening to you. And that's why in my remarks, not knowing how to spell pistachio, the medical profession has to understand that there's two patients when they make a diagnosis. And also with that, I believe employers have to understand that they can help the caregiver by maybe giving some time off or setting aside moments where they can make phone calls and so forth, because as a caregiver, I'm apt to get sick sooner and die sooner, and to have my savings eaten up. And so, I don't know, does that sort of give you an understanding? Yes? All right. This is a very, I'm going to repeat the question, it's a very important question. Sometimes men, and this is not your brother-in-law, no, sometimes men are really stupid. You know, and not only that, sometimes, hey, no waving the towel like But the fact is, sometimes we are in denial and we refuse to admit, you know, what is happening to our loved one. We don't want to let go. And that's why I said one of the important points is learning or trying to let go. And so in talking with Tom, I says, sometimes I don't know if we're going to have to beat it into people or not. But I'm trying to, through experiences like this, give men an excuse or a reason to seek help. What happened to me was I got involved with the Alzheimer's Association through Elaine, looking for a female doctor. I've been going through counseling, and they've done just a super job in helping me through this whole thing. And no person can do it alone. I don't see how anyone can go through this alone and end up alive. I don't just see how it can happen. So, yes, sir. Good question. What is the impact on my children, great-grandchildren, and grandchildren? Here's what I found out. Everyone handles Alzheimer's a different way. I have 4 children, and all of the 4 children handle it a different way, and I can't begrudge them. So, for example, when they would call, I would put Elaine on the phone. They live in different cities. And what that conversation would be is a constant reminder that their mom wasn't their mom anymore. And so they sort of felt, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to deal with that. We had Thanksgiving dinner the other day, and we were all together, and Elaine wanted to know who those strangers were. Well, my 2 daughters are willing to take this new Elaine and take her for walks. Some of the grandkids are, but everyone is trying to adjust to this and handling it their own way. I had to handle it my own way, and so everyone handles it a different way, and you cannot begrudge anyone for handling it the way they want to handle it, because it's impacting loss. So, how much time do we have? Done? Oh, 10 minutes? I could tell another story. Yeah. Yes. How long did it take for me to give up my first Elaine, and how did I go about doing it? It probably, if Elaine has had Alzheimer's for 12 years, maybe I began to sort of get an understanding 3 years ago. And it was basically through counseling with the Alzheimer's Association, you know, understanding the fact that the brain is broken. As you no more would expect someone with 2 broken legs to run a 100-yard dash, so should you no longer, so no longer would you ever want to expect this person with Alzheimer's to know where things are, to not put things away, and so forth. And so, as my counselor helped me through these things, I began to understand and began to get the picture. Anything else? Way in the back. Was I the sole caregiver? In the beginning, yes, I was a sole caregiver. I tried to get help. And as I said, St. Anne's was a marvelous place because they gave Elaine assistance and so on. But then I tried to get someone to come into the home, and Elaine would have no part of that. Absolutely not. So, we'd say no part of that. It's just that today we were together and earlier, and Patsy Cline has got this song, Crazy, and Crazy, I'm crazy for loving you. And she looked at me really angry. She says, why do you have to be crazy for loving me? And I mentioned that because she would not have anyone else in her own home. I said, Elaine, you have to understand, this is for me. She says, that's your problem. And but anyway, so I tried for a period of probably 8-9 years to try and get some help in the home, and it didn't work. I tried to get people to come in and take her for, I tried to get help to come in, and I said, hey, this woman is coming new to the city, and she needs instructions on where to go. Would you take her? Elaine says, no, you know, which is unlike her. So, yes, anything further? Oh, all right. Yes. Okay, what kind of doctor diagnoses? Dr. Antuano is probably the leading Alzheimer's experts in the area. And psychiatrists, I guess, can do it. Psychologists can do it. But also, I think we ourselves can make a diagnosis of Alzheimer's depending upon the person's demeanor and the person's behavior. They give a simple test, and this is explained also in the book. It's basically a 30-point test asking questions: who's president of the United States of America, what day is it, what month is Christmas in, it's a series of questions like that. Elaine started out like at about 28 out of 30, and she's now down to 8. And so meaning that as time went on, she regressed. So I think you want to have a diagnosis, but I think you want to come about it in a natural way and not worry about the prospects. But I also want to mention that it is possible to show signs of dementia and have it be from something completely different. It could be a mix-up of drugs. It could be another type of illness. It could be depression. So if you can't find the car keys one moment, that doesn't mean you've got, dementia. Yes, Sister Edna? Sister Edna, and I didn't pay her to say this, really. I didn't. She said, of all the books she's ever read, this certainly was one of them. No, she said that she thought I was quite forthright and honest in the book. And what was the last part? Right, and it's never too late, either to be forgiven or to start and do the job right. It never is. And I tell you, the sooner you get to it, you can just feel sort of refreshed and I don't know, cleansed is the proper term, but just making up that lost time. So, anything further? Okay, yes. Did everybody hear that over here? Well, you're very kind, and someone says you are really good for doing it, but my response is, it's it's like a river running its course. It's something that I would want to do, and I don't deserve any more accolades than anyone else in any other. It's just that, as I said, I just felt compelled that there's got to be a better way of helping people through this misery. So, but thank you very much. Yes, I guess one more question. Are you? Would you more? Yes. The point was raised that he heard on the news that there was some cure that was coming along for Alzheimer's, that I heard anything about it. Not enough to comment on to give anyone any solace or disappointment one way or another. How would they find out about that, Tom? It was on 60 Minutes? Yeah. So YouTube would have some information on that. 60 Minutes it was on. Yes, I guess one more question. Point was raised, what about sundowning, which is a period of time in the evening when we become changed more? That would be your understanding also. No, I do not have any particular experience with that, other than I believe that that drugs are helpful to take away some of that anxiety. It is just an emotional boiling up of feelings that causes that, and sometimes it can be controlled. So, well, yes, sir? Will I please come and talk to you again soon? Well, I would ask for a vote, but then I don't know if I would need a recount. The books are for sale over there in the corner. Thank you.
Marty, thank you so much. For so many years, Elaine shared you with us, and we are grateful to you for sharing now sharing Elaine and her story with us as well. You both have done remarkable things for Milwaukee and our state, and we are so appreciative that you were able to give us your time today.
An MCM production.